I think history is important because you can learn about your country and your surroundings.
It's important, because I can relate to, some of the decisions that I make now are similar to decisions that people have made in the past.
History gives people a sense of their place in today's world.
It's very important to understand our past so that you've got some context.
You have to look back before you go forward.
Learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's helpful.
You know, the terrible thing that I see is so many misconceptions about the past.
The big event, the big person, usually male, who is seen as the driving force behind it.
There's a tendency to simplify if you don't really dig into things, you know.
I think a lot of the more interesting history is from the bottom up rather than from the top down.
Where is it that there's a place that can mean that our understandings of what it meant to be alive as an American?
Where did they get information that they could believe in, that was authentic, that was verifiable? It was from historical institutions. It was from museums and libraries.
And when you have the possibility through a place like a historical society to read the diary of somebody or the letters that they sent home, that gives you access to them as a human being rather than just sort of some cut-out cardboard character.
We are the ones who collect New Hampshire history. We are the ones who provide it for the general public. We are the access point.
The storehouse and main source of New Hampshire history.
New Hampshire is not just a tiny little place where, we do maple syrup and granite.
I think that's one thing that we're really trying to do here is what is New Hampshire?
If you want to know about where you come from, why it's important, what the future may portend based upon your history, this is the institution that can do that.
We are the state's memory.
In order to be really participants in our democracy, we need to be informed. We need to understand how we got here. We need to know what our values are. And so the Historical Society is really a vehicle to allow that to happen.
We hold the objects, the documents. We hold New Hampshire's history. All of that collection tells a story about our past, a story about people, places, events.
It's the only institution that preserves all of New Hampshire's history. So it has a very serious obligation to do it right and to do it in a way that can be enduring and will last, frankly, forever.
The Society was founded in 1823 under the recommendation of John Farmer, who was a local Concord genealogist. He's considered by many to be the founder of modern genealogy.
Almost 100 years later, after the founding, they created this beautiful home for the Society, which is this beloved building, our library building on Park Street. So that was the second sort of watershed event in the life of this institution.
Around 1900 or so, it became obvious that the Society had grown to the point where it needed a newer and larger facility. Edward Tuck, a New Hampshire native, son of Amos Tuck, the founder of the Republican Party, agreed to fund the entire project of building the new Historical Society library. The original plans were enhanced, a larger rotunda, a more impressive rotunda. Originally it was supposed to be a brick building, and Tuck and his wife, Julia particularly, said, build it with the best way you can.
This building is a dramatic representation of a state that wants to say where we came from is important. We want to remember that. And as evidence of it, we build a building that will hold that memory for the future
Runlet Junior High School here in Concord, over the past couple of days, has had several hundred kids coming in here to do some work using original source documents and projects to teach them how to do that kind of research.
What we're asking students to do is we're asking them not to just look at objects and not to just look at documents, but to do some analytical thinking and some critical thinking around what they are seeing.
Vermont didn't exist until about 1777, so when you look at these maps, they include Vermont.
We have an outstanding educational program. 70% of all the fourth graders in New Hampshire are exposed to the Society's programming.
We both bring them in for museum visits, and then we also have history boxes that go out which contain objects and which contain lessons.
History, as I learned it in school, you had to memorize the dates, and if you couldn't memorize or you forgot some of them, you were not successful. History, to me, what I present to the kids is how people lived.
It says he was much out of case.
We've had people who've walked through the door yawning and thinking, my teachers dragged me here and I'm not going to say a word, I could care less about this. And by the time they leave, they're really not feeling that way, because one thing will intrigue someone, and that's when you grab them.
It's wonderful providing direct educational experiences for students, but it's also wonderful to be able to access their teachers with materials they need.
What we want to be able to do is simply make ourselves more accessible to more people in more places. So accessibility is what digitization allows.
You know, I found in my own research now, there is some digitized material out there, and it's so much easier to find exactly what you're looking for.
When you consider the collections that we have, they're all housed here in a building. And it's a beautiful building. It's made of granite. It's not going to go anywhere. It's climate controlled. The materials are safe and preserved, but they're not available to the general public unless they come in.
And the digitization that the New Hampshire Historical Society is considering will just make things so much easier.
We're creating really a digital community. We're calling it New Hampshire History Online. They'll be able to see images of a tremendous percentage of the overall collections. We'll have our baseline exhibit of New Hampshire history, but we'll have all this additional material that teachers can build lesson plans on, and they can keep their lesson plan year by year, add to it, use it, give their students projects.
We will be able to reach out to the local historical society so that they may participate in a much broader network of sharing New Hampshire history.
So the goal of the society is to become visible to everyone who wants to access us. And that means that we need to digitally photograph everything in the collection.
We have 31,000 objects in the collection, and that ranges from furniture, ceramics, glass, clocks, to paintings, agricultural equipment, vehicles. Documents are in the library collection. There are over 2 million of those.
The objects that we would like to put online and we would like to have as part of our digital collection really require inspecting. They require updating the description. This is more than just a 1 or 2 year project.
As part of our ongoing cataloging projects, we've not only been discovering and documenting the history of these objects, but we've also been describing them in detail, in particular their conditions.
3 spots of discoloration.
Preparing conservation reports on these objects. That's important because it tells us about the condition of a piece, allowing us to figure out what pieces need to be conserved or repaired, cleaned.
Pretty much all of the paintings need some work done, either a light surface cleaning or a more evasive conservation effort needs to be done on some of these paintings. So a lot of my time has been doing a lot of background research on the sitters or the artists and determining whether or not it's feasible and affordable to pour all this money into conserving this portrait.
Arguably, the most important artifact in the Society's collection is its library building.
There are some things we can do to prepare it for its next 100 years and beyond, and what we're thinking about is a greening of the building.
Those systems that are, you know, the wiring and the ductwork and the things to bring them up to current standards.
It's likely we'll cut our energy bill in half for the building, and we'll cut the carbon footprint of the building by 75%. So we want to make those investments in this building. I really think we're at another watershed moment in the history of this institution. Our generation has a chance to do something on a par with the founding of the institution 2 centuries ago and the creation of the library building 1 century ago. So I really think it's a pivotal moment in the history of the Society.
I mean, why shouldn't someone in California or halfway around the world be able to see the actual words of John Stark, live free or die? We can do that now in a very exciting way.
To look at the original source document, a letter written by Robert Frost to the Society with his dues check of $7.
Working here and doing this job and knowing that my work will be used by the public and that public can gain access to it, that's the big part of sort of our mission here, and this online database will allow us to do that.
We're here for the serious scholar who's writing a dissertation, and we're here for the average person who just enjoys some aspect of our history and wants to learn more.
We're moving so fast, and we think everything is forward, and we think everything is new. And if we can step back a little bit and look at history, and particularly the way it's been preserved here and what's actually here, I mean, it's so vast.
What interests me and interests my collaborator Ken Burns in the making of our films, we could not do it without a place like the New Hampshire Historical Society and its collection, because we can't make this stuff up.
The mission of the New Hampshire Historical Society is to preserve and make accessible the materials on New Hampshire's past.
As part of a museum, as part of a nonprofit, and as part of being in the public trust, it's our job as stewards of the collection.
New Hampshire really needs a place like this where history stays alive.